Dive right in with a really fundamental question. We often assume that when a patient has a water filter at home, they have safe water. But the research suggests the reality, well, it's a lot more complicated. And this directly impacts the health outcomes we're seeing in our communities.
So let's start by looking at a pretty surprising and, frankly, quite concerning gap. It's this gap between how many households think they're treating their water correctly and the actual microbial quality of the water that they end up drinking.
Now, this finding is just incredibly important. Even when people believed they were doing everything right, the vast majority still had water contaminated with thermotolerant coliforms. And as you know, those are bacteria that point to fecal contamination. So what does that tell us? It means that just owning a purifier isn't a guarantee of safety at all. The technology in the home is often just not delivering.
And the stakes here could not be higher. Just think about this number, 1.2 million. That's the number of premature deaths globally, back in 2013, that were attributed to unsafe water sources. This number just really underscores why making sure water purification is truly effective isn't just a convenience, it's a life or death issue and a core part of the preventative medicine we practice.
So all of this naturally brings us to the technology itself. I mean, with so many options on the market, right? From old school traditional methods to modern machines, what does the scientific evidence actually say about how well they work? Let's break it all down.
This table gives us a really quick, at-a-glance comparison. On one end of the spectrum, you've got your traditional methods. Boiling is highly effective, of course, but it needs fuel. On the other hand, straining water through a cloth, well, that's just largely inadequate for removing dangerous pathogens. Then you have modern systems like UV and especially reverse osmosis, or RO, which show very high effectiveness.
And what's really interesting is how this chart visually confirms that data. You can see it right here. This shows the actual microbial reduction measured in one study. The gravity-based filters, like the ceramic ones, they show a moderate reduction. UV-based filters are quite a bit better. But just look at the performance of the RO-based systems on the right. They achieve the highest reduction of harmful bacteria like E. coli.
But here's the thing. Removing pathogens is only half the battle. In many parts of India, geogenic contaminants, we're talking about chemicals that are just naturally in the ground, pose a really severe health threat. Chronic arsenic pollution in groundwater is a huge challenge that most of these microbial filters simply aren't designed to handle.
The good news, though, is that Indian scientific institutions have really risen to this challenge. Premier institutes like the IITs have developed some amazing, low-cost, innovative, and effective technologies, like the ones you see here, which are specifically designed to get arsenic out of drinking water. They're perfect for the regions that are most affected.
Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial point. We've seen that the right technology exists for both microbes and chemicals. So why did that first statistic we saw show such poor results in people's homes? Well, the answer lies in what we call the user effectiveness problem. And here's where we get to the heart of the solution. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has a simple three-part framework. First off, you need effective treatment, the right filter for the job. But second, and this is so important, you must have safe storage. Purified water can easily get contaminated all over again if it's stored in a dirty container. And third, and this is where we all come in, is user education on proper hygiene and regular filter maintenance. So, this is the crucial point, right? How can you, as their doctor, turn all of this science into simple, practical, and truly life-saving advice for your patients? This is exactly where your guidance can help bridge that safety gap that we talked about at the beginning.
Here are 4 essential things you can discuss. First, just ask them, hey, where does your water actually come from? Is it a bore well, a tanker, or from the municipality? That's going to determine the likely contaminants. Second, help them figure out if their filter is the right match for those local risks. A family in an area with high arsenic needs something different than a standard UV purifier. Third, really emphasize how important clean storage containers are. And finally, and you really have to stress this point, regular filter maintenance is not optional. A poorly maintained filter can actually end up being worse than no filter at all.
And so this brings us to our final thought. The real challenge isn't just about technology, it's about behavior, it's about knowledge, and it's about consistent practice. By bringing these simple, evidence-based questions into our conversations with patients, we can play a really powerful role in closing that gap and making sure the water purifiers in our patients' homes are truly protecting their health. Thank you.